Jon Jones destroys Tom Aspinall and reveals why he's overrated. Donald Trump's son just gave Jones the push he needed to fight at the White House. Jake Paul has an insane new challenge. A former world champion wants to face him twice in the same night. And Daniel Cormier drops a terrifying warning for Gable Steveson about following Jon Jones's footsteps. Jon Jones was not impressed, and what he just said about Tom Aspinall is going to set fire to the heavyweight division. The leading GOAT, contender watched on in late October as the heavyweight title he formerly held was on the line at UFC 321 in Abu Dhabi, and what he saw was disappointing. Jones's successor, Tom Aspinall, was making his first defense against Cyril Gane in the main event, hoping to cement his status as undisputed king of the division. However, Aspinall versus Gane ended in a no contest after a deep eye poke from the French challenger left the champion unable to continue, generating massive controversy. But, although the fight didn't last even a full round, Bones saw enough to make a fairly brutal assessment of Aspinall's ability. Aspinall accused Jones of ducking him before the Rochester native vacated the title to retire, so it's safe to say they're not exactly friends. With that in mind, it was no surprise to see Jones mocking Aspinall for UFC 321 in his initial reaction. After previously focusing on the ending, Bones has now spoken about the action leading up to that controversial moment. Breaking down the short fight on the No Scripts podcast, the former heavyweight and light heavyweight champion described Aspinall as a one-dimensional fighter who's being overrated in two crucial areas. The analysis was devastating and is making waves in the MMA community. Tom's a great athlete, but I do feel like he's a one-trick pony. I believe that his wrestling and jiu-jitsu is incredibly overrated. He has a beautiful 1-2. That's really about it. He couldn't touch Cyril Gane at all, Jones said with total conviction, tearing apart the current champion. That's the way I felt. I feel like Gane was just getting warmed up. He was touching him. He was so comfortable, Jones continued, making it clear he saw a weak performance from Aspinall before the premature ending. This statement is explosive because it comes from the man many consider the greatest fighter of all time, and he's basically saying Aspinall is no match for the best. Aspinall may not have too long to wait for an opportunity to answer his haters and prove Jones wrong. Soon after the anticlimactic ending to UFC 321, Dana White announced Aspinall vs. Gane 2 as the likely next step in the heavyweight division, giving the Englishman a shot at redemption. With some believing that Gane was showing early signs of an upset in Abu Dhabi, the reigning heavyweight king will look to establish his usual dominance the second time around. In doing so, he could prove Jones wrong, much like he did by running through Curtis Blades in 2024, when he was also underestimated. The pressure is maximum on Aspinall now. He not only needs to beat Gane convincingly in the rematch, but also needs to show he has a complete game that goes beyond the quick knockout. Jones threw down the gauntlet, and now the entire world is waiting to see if Aspinall can prove the GOAT is completely wrong about his abilities. The narrative is set for one of the most important rematches in recent heavyweight history. Jon Jones is certainly not giving up the ghost on a return to the UFC anytime soon, and the fight he wants is leaving everyone in shock, staking his claim. For a spot on next summer's UFC White House card in the Capitol, former two-weight champion Jon Jones has been shunned so far by promotional boss Dana White, but that's not stopping Bones. Maintaining his interest in potentially one final fight in combat sports since his retirement earlier this year, Jones has been linked to a blockbuster clash against Alex Pereira, and what he just revealed about why he wants this specific fight is fascinating. After a political figurehead gave Jones a seal of approval to compete, the Rochester native revealed why he wants to face the Brazilian in particular, all in on a massive heavyweight showdown with fellow former two-division champion Pereira. The Sao Paulo star is the one who actually brought legs to this matchup. Linked with a heavyweight move, ever since regaining the light heavyweight throne last month, the Brazilian knockout king has even played down a pairing with Tom Aspinall in favor of a matchup with Jones, showing where his true priorities lie. As far as the New Yorker is concerned, the manner in which Pereira has called him out is one of the key reasons for his willingness to face him. In fact, Jones's statement was thrilling and showed the mutual respect between these two giants. It would be a blockbuster event. I think the whole world would come out. I'd like to fight Alex Pereira at the White House. I feel like he's incredibly respectful. I feel like he's a household name in America and in MMA. Everybody knows who he is, Jones told the No Scripts podcast with genuine enthusiasm. He's the champion. He's in the conversation as one of the greatest of all time. Either way that fight was to go, no one loses in that fight. It generates so many millions for the sport. There's no losing when you have such high-level people competing, Jones explained, showing he understands the massive value of this showdown. Fighting just twice at heavyweight during his octagon tenure, Jones enjoyed a gold-laden stint at 200 Welterweight in the promotion, taking on all comers. Notably, however, the look-see-do star took on a total of 6 separate Brazilian opponents during his UFC run, and this statistic is important. And against each one, Jones prevailed, including a brutal knockout and submission of Shogun Rua and Lyoto Machida, respectively, as well as a hard-fought decision win over Pereira's coach, Glover Teixeira. This perfect record against Brazilians adds an extra layer of narrative to the potential super fight. Jones knows the Brazilian style inside and out, having dominated some of the best fighters Brazil has ever produced. But Pereira represents a new kind of challenge, a devastating knockout artist who's in his prime. This fight has everything to be the biggest of the year if it happens. The mutual respect, Jones's history against Brazilians, and the fact that both are considered among the all-time greats create the perfect storm for an epic showdown. Jake Paul continues to draw suitors for a potential end-of-year return to the ring amid the fiasco surrounding his failed comeback next week. Scheduled to fight WBA lightweight champion Gervonta Davis in a mismatch exhibition bout next weekend, the pairing has been completely shelved, with Jake Paul now steadfast on a December return. Already linked to a particular series of fights, the Ohio native has played down a rematch with Nate Diaz, despite the former UFC star claiming he had agreed to the clash. And with a showdown with Francis Ngannou also rumored, Paul may have a new lifeline in the form of a clash with a former welterweight world champion, and the proposal is insane. Calling time on his heralded pro boxing career nearly 10 years ago, former world champion welterweight star Timothy Bradley is the latest in a massive list of stars to welcome a clash with Paul. Most famed for his trilogy series with the iconic Manny Pacquiao, Bradley inflicted a shock-split decision defeat on the Filipino star back in 2012, winning WBO gold in one of boxing's biggest upsets. And going on to suffer losses to Pacquiao in their rematch and subsequent rubber match, Bradley surprisingly hung up his gloves and left the sport. However, taking aim at both Paul and his associate Jaleon Love, Bradley vowed to snap his 9-year hiatus and beat the duo in the same night. The statement was absurd and is leaving everyone shocked. Yeah, I'm getting in shape. And if y'all want to see me, like I said, you know what it is. 2 for 1, it's still going on. In the same night. In the same damn night. Try me. Call my bluff, bro. For real. Bradley told Fight Hype with terrifying confidence. You woke up an animal, bro. I still got it. Hey, remember, I retired early. I still had a lot left in my damn tank. I can come back and wax both Jake Paul and Jaleon Love's in the same night. 5 rounds apiece, Bradley explained, proposing an absolutely crazy challenge. Bradley's proposal is unprecedented in modern boxing. Fighting 2 opponents in the same night is something we haven't seen in decades in the sport. And doing it at 41 years old, after 9 years away from the ring, is even more audacious. Bradley clearly felt disrespected by Paul and Love, and is willing to put his legacy on the line to prove a point. The question now is whether Paul will accept this crazy challenge. On one hand, it would be an incredible content opportunity, and would generate millions in attention. On the other hand, facing a legitimate former world champion like Bradley, even if out of shape, is a gigantic risk for Paul. and the idea of possibly having to fight twice in the same night adds a layer of difficulty Paul has never experienced. Bradley threw down the gauntlet in a way Paul simply can't ignore. If he refuses, he'll be seen as afraid of a retired fighter. If he accepts and loses, his credibility as a boxer will be destroyed. It's a strategic checkmate situation Bradley created, and now the world is waiting to see if Paul has the courage to accept this insane challenge. After begging Dana White to allow him to compete on the UFC White House event, Jon Jones just received a gigantic boost from Donald Trump's son, and this changes everything. Just weeks after his retirement from the UFC was announced, former two-weight world champion Jon Jones stated that he would return on the UFC White House event scheduled for June 14, 2026, creating massive buzz. However, his plan was quickly shot down by boss Dana White, who said he cannot trust Bones enough to put him on such a huge event, considering his unpredictability over the years. The rejection was harsh and public. Despite White's words, though, Jones continues to make a plea to be involved on the monumental event, and he has now been given a huge boost. With the UFC White House event coming halfway through 2026, details continue to emerge regarding how the event will look and what fans can expect. Earlier, this week it was announced that the event will not only be a fight night event, and that dignitaries from around the world will attend a dinner and then go and watch the fights with President Donald Trump octagon side, making this the biggest event in UFC history. And with Trump having a huge influence on how the event will shape up, Jones has been given a gigantic boost by Eric Trump, the president's son, as he wants to see the former UFC light heavyweight and heavyweight champion compete on the UFC card. The statement was explosive and could completely change the game. I mean, Jon Jones has to fight there. He has to. I would love to see him compete on the event. I feel like he has one left in him, and man, if there's ever one you're gonna do, it's the White House. I think you're gonna see Conor McGregor at that one, Trump said on the Full Send podcast with total enthusiasm. This statement from the president's son is gigantic because it shows the Trump family wants Jones on the event, potentially overriding Dana White's objections. The pressure on White now is massive. How can he deny Jones a spot on the card when the son of the President of the United States himself is publicly saying he should be there? This is an impossible position for White. At this point, it seems Jones is only interested in a fight against UFC light heavyweight champion Alex Pereira, and after recently receiving a call-out from the Brazilian, he responded by accepting the potential challenge. And although the promotion may have been apprehensive to make that fight, whilst Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight champion, his recent no-contest disaster against Cyril Gane ties him down for at least a few more months, opening a perfect window. That could benefit both Jones and Pereira, whose potential clash has been labeled as the biggest fight in human history by longtime UFC icon Joe Rogan. With the Trump family's endorsement and the scheduling availability created by Aspinall's situation, the stars are aligning perfectly for Jones versus Pereira at the White House. Dana White is being cornered from all sides and may have no choice but to make this super fight happen. The pressure is on, and the entire world is watching to see if White will cave and give fans the fight everyone wants to see on the biggest stage the UFC has ever had. Gable Steveson may not want to follow every example that Jon Jones sets, and the warning Daniel Cormier just dropped is terrifying. The 2020 Olympic gold medalist in freestyle wrestling is being tipped for success inside the cage after beginning his MMA career in style this year, destroying everything in his path. Since transitioning to the sport, Steveson has been training under the guidance of Jones, a former two-division UFC champion and leading contender for GOAT status. Despite being Jones's most bitter rival, Daniel Cormier has been giving Bones his flowers in recent years, acknowledging his greatness. He did so again recently by suggesting the Rochester native could be an important figure in Steveson's career. But DC attached a warning for the heavyweight prospect regarding his former UFC enemy, And this message is crucial for Stevenson's future. After a 98-second knockout in his MMA debut, earlier this year, Gable Steveson most recently put his striking power on display in another sport, leaving everyone impressed. With Jones in attendance, Stevenson landed a 13-second dirty boxing KO, an absurd performance. Reacting to that on his Good Guy, Bad Guy show with Chael Sonnen, Cormier had nothing but good things to say about the wrestling legend. In fact, Cormier placed Stevenson above Bo Nickel as America's new best hope for another UFC champion, a massive opinion shift. DC thinks his rival could help Stevenson get there, but he also warned that the Olympic champion must be aware of which parts of Jones to ignore. And this is the most important part of the message. It sounds like Jones is taking a real hands-on approach with coaching him. I saw him in that garage that they train in with Jones, watching over him. We'll see, because if there's anyone to impart knowledge on you, it is John Jones, Cormier said, acknowledging Jones's value as a mentor. But there are some other things that Gable is going to have to make sure he ignores to ensure that he gets to where he wants to go, Cormier added, with a tone of warning that cannot be ignored. This warning from Cormier is profound and loaded with meaning. Everyone knows that Jones, despite possibly being the greatest fighter of all time inside the octagon, has had significant problems outside of it. From suspensions for banned substance use to legal troubles and erratic behavior, Jones has a track record that has tarnished his legacy in the eyes of many. Cormier is essentially saying, learn Jones's fighting techniques, absorb his tactical knowledge, but don't follow his example in terms of life choices. Despite being only one fight into his MMA career, Stevenson could find himself under the UFC banner sooner rather than later. His debut in dirty boxing came in front of a notable audience member, as UFC matchmaker Mick Maynard had a front row seat to Stevenson's rapid KO, observing everything closely. Post-fight, the wrestling specialist staked his claim for a shot in MMA's leading promotion. I think a special guest was here to come watch me. Mick, you've seen a little bit. I would love to show a lot more. Hopefully, you believe in me, and I appreciate you, Stevenson said regarding Maynard, making his intentions crystal clear. Stevenson's situation is fascinating. He has the Olympic pedigree, the tutelage of one of the all-time greats, and clear UFC interest. But Cormier's warning serves as a crucial reminder. Talent and skill aren't enough for lasting greatness in MMA. Discipline, professionalism, and smart life choices are equally important. Stevenson is at a crossroads. He can absorb only the best from Jones and become a clean, dominant star. Or he can fall into the same traps that have damaged his mentor's legacy. The world is watching, and the path Stevenson chooses will determine whether he's remembered as one of the greats or as another wasted talent. His future is in his own hands.